Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. So we've been talking about the lawsuit by Jane Doe, who attended Interlochen School in Michigan, and how her attorney, Robert Glassman, was not willing to be part of the compensation fund, and in fact was looking to push their cause via a civil trial. Well, now we're hearing that the feds are looking to have that civil lawsuit against Maxwell postponed because they say that the information from that civil suit overlaps the criminal one. So I can understand why they would want to halt that civil case for now, put the brakes on it, and focus on the criminal case, right? I think that the criminal case takes precedent in this matter, so that's why the feds are looking to get this postponed here for a minute. So let's jump into this article from ABC News and see exactly what the feds have going on. This article was authored by James Hill. Headline: Feds seek halt to civil lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell. Federal prosecutors pursuing the criminal case against Ghislaine Maxwell in New York are asking a judge to temporarily halt proceedings in a civil lawsuit filed by an alleged child sex abuse victim against Maxwell and the estate of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, arguing that there is significant risk that proceedings with the case would adversely affect the ongoing criminal prosecution against Maxwell. And remember, these are the prosecutors who are asking the judge to halt this now. I would think that they have recognized some significant overlap, and they believe that it will work to adversely affect the criminal portion of this case. So therefore, they're asking that this civil suit be postponed. Not canceled, but postponed. And I wonder just exactly what is in that civil case that is going to overlap. I mean, obviously, we're going to find out, I'm sure, as the trial gets closer and we get to discovery and we get to see some of the evidence prosecution has, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm pretty curious to see what is in that suit as well. In a letter posted to the court docket of the civil case this week, prosecutors from the Southern District of New York asserted that there is a factual overlap between the civil and criminal cases that could result in premature disclosure of evidence and testimony from witnesses who may be called upon in both cases. So basically, this is confirming what we talked about, right? That the charges against Maxwell are based on what this survivor has told the prosecution. So it's looking like, from where I'm sitting, that everything lines up, that this Jane Doe that is represented by Glassman is also the where the complaint stemmed that Maxwell was involved in abuse from 94 to 97. And that, in turn, is what they ended up arresting her on. So what they don't want the civil portion of that case and the disclosure in the civil portion of that case to adversely affect the chances of them putting Ghislaine Maxwell behind bars. Such witnesses may be forced to testify about any efforts to assist the criminal investigation and prosecution and may thereby expose facts about the investigation and could potentially expose witnesses and or their families to harassment, the government's letter states. And I think that's a good point. I think it's definitely a good point that the criminal portion of this case should take precedent. It's very important that none of the evidence or witness statements are provided to the defense before the criminal portion of this case. We don't want them having themselves some time to find a way to defend those charges, right? We want to make sure that they don't have any sort of benefit of time. We don't want them to have a leg up. So I think it's important that the criminal case is what's focused on. Moreover, permitting any discovery to proceed in this lawsuit would enable Maxwell to seek a preview of trial testimony in the criminal case and would afford her with a broader array of discovery than she is entitled to in the criminal case. And there it is, right there. That's what the prosecution is trying to avoid. It sounds sinister at first when you read the headline, right? You read the headline of this, you're like, what the hell is the federal government doing trying to stop a civil case? But when you get into the context of it and you start to read and research what's really going on, you understand that it is essential for the evidence in the criminal case to be safeguarded. Absolutely essential. The civil lawsuit, filed in January under the pseudonym Jane Doe, contains allegations that are substantially similar to those contained in the criminal indictment against Maxwell, who allegedly groomed 3 minor girls to be abused by Epstein between 1994 and 1997, and, in some instances, participated in the abuse herself, according to prosecutors. Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to the charges and has denied the allegations in the civil suit. So right there, the ABC News is talking about the same thing I just mentioned. It is quite apparent that these allegations are the same one that are in the civil suit, and that Jane Doe, who is being represented by attorney Glassman, is the person who we're talking about here. Now, who that person's what her real identity is, I don't know or care. Until she's ready to release her identity, then we'll just continue to call her Jane Doe, right? And as much as I want all of these gals to be able to pursue things in a civil manner as well, if that's going to impede the criminal portion of this case, I think that it's important that it's halted, right? Temporarily halted until we can figure out criminally what's going on here, because these people need to go to prison. In its letter to the court, the government declined to address speculation Maxwell's attorneys have raised in court filings that Doe is one of the alleged survivors identified in the criminal case, but prosecutors offered to make additional information available to the civil case judge privately if necessary. Doe's attorneys have declined to comment on the apparent parallels to the criminal case. And again, look, I'm not going to get too deep into that. I'm not going to dig into that, right? It's rather apparent what's going on here. It's rather apparent that the parallels to the criminal case and the civil case here are abundant, and it is rather apparent to anyone paying attention that these cases will have some overlap. And I thought that we'd see this coming down the pipe, that there would be a bit of a problem with the two cases running concurrently, considering they're focused on the same thing. And I didn't know that the prosecution obviously would ask to halt one of these cases, but I thought that we'd see something like this at some point. By advocating for a stay in the civil case, the government finds itself, in this instance, aligned with Maxwell and the co-executors of Epstein's estate, who have been arguing for months that the case should be placed on hold while criminal investigations of Epstein's alleged co-conspirators remain open. Absent a stay, Miss Maxwell will be forced to choose between her constitutional right to remain silent and her active and vigorous participation in defending against and refuting Doe's false claims in this case, wrote Maxwell's lawyer Laura Menninger in a letter to the court last week. And again, without knowing everything that's in both of these cases, I think we have to take a step back and wait for more information to come out, right? Now, again, from what we know, I don't want the civil portion of Jane Doe's case here giving Ghislaine Maxwell the upper hand in the criminal case by giving her discovery early or materials that her and her lawyers should not have. So we're going to have to see how this breaks and get a little bit more information here. But from what I see now, it most certainly looks like they don't want to put that criminal case in any jeopardy whatsoever. Doe's lawyers have consistently opposed those efforts, arguing in court filings that a stay would simply delay overlong due justice. Doe is seeking to hold defendant Maxwell accountable for the heinous and sick sexual acts she committed against her over the course of several years while she was just a child, wrote her lawyer Robert Glassman of Panish, Shea & Boyle, LLP, in a letter to the court. She is best served by pressing forward with her claims, not waiting even longer for justice. Well, again, I'm not really privy to any of the information that Mr. Glassman has or what him and his client have discussed. But I would think that if the goal is the pursuit of justice, then the criminal case is the most important one. Of more than 30 women who brought legal claims against Epstein's estate following his death last year, Doe is the only accuser who has thus far declined to put her lawsuit on hold to pursue an alternative resolution via the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund, a voluntary, non-adversarial program established by the estate that began evaluating claims in June. And again, I've been very clear. I believe that Doe has every right in the world to pursue her claims in a manner that she chooses. If she wants to pursue this civilly, I am 100% for it. But with that said, I don't think her civil case supersedes the criminal case as a whole. I think that she should be able to go after Maxwell criminally, but if the court decides to halt her civil case, then I don't think that she really has an argument that her civil case should be moved forward before the criminal portion. Doe alleges in her complaint that she was first approached at age 13 by Epstein and Maxwell in 1994 at a summer camp at the Interlochen Center for the Arts in Michigan, and that a months-long grooming process by Epstein and Maxwell continued after she returned home to Florida. And we went into detail about this whole entire allegation, what Doe claims occurred, and what supposedly happened to Doe by Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Doe, now 40, alleges that the sexual abuse by Epstein escalated over the next few years as Epstein and Maxwell asserted control over her life. She claims she was sexually abused at Epstein's homes in Florida, New York, and his ranch in New Mexico, and that she would often travel to those locations with Epstein and Maxwell on one of Epstein's private jets. Now, that's the same story we've heard from all the other girls, basically, right? The ones that were chosen to be abused by Maxwell and Epstein. It's the same story. The grooming process, the normalization process, and then the abuse starts. Epstein's system of abuse was facilitated in large part by his co-conspirator and accomplice Maxwell, who helped supply him with a steady stream of young and vulnerable girls, the complaint said. During Doe's time in New York, Maxwell also regularly facilitated Epstein's abuse of Doe and was frequently present when it occurred. And you wonder why I call her general all-around scumbag, fellow child abuser, and a bipedal serpent. That is why. She was not just a procurer or a groomer or anything of the sort. She took part. Maxwell formally requested a stay in Doe's case last month, arguing that Doe had failed to articulate a cogent reason for wanting to press ahead with her lawsuit while the criminal case is ongoing and while Doe can choose to present her claims to the estate's compensation fund. And again, I think that Doe should be able to pursue this in whatever means she wants to and whatever means are available under the law, but I don't think her claim supersedes the criminal one. If it's money she seeks, she can pursue it in the claims program, Menninger wrote in a letter to the court last week. If it's justice she seeks, the criminal case will resolve those issues one way or the other. Doe's lawyers have countered that a stay of the case would deprive her and the public with an opportunity to learn long-hidden information about Epstein's alleged criminal sex trafficking operation and Maxwell's alleged role in it. Well, I would say that would be the case if we didn't have the criminal case running concurrently. But I think that in discovery of the criminal case, everything that we'll learn or would learn in this civil case, we're going to learn in the criminal case, and you can times it by 10. Because a lot is going to come out. And obviously they know that overlap would happen. So the stuff that's in that civil case is going to be in this criminal case as well. At least a good portion of it, in my opinion. The continuation of this last remaining civil avenue can furnish the public with critical information as to defendant Maxwell's well-known criminal enterprise, how it was operated, and all those involved. A stay of the civil proceedings would provide what defendant Maxwell has sought for years, concealing her heinous acts from public view, Glassman wrote to the court last month. And again, if it wasn't for the criminal case, I would 100% agree with Glassman here. But if this is going to in any way jeopardize Maxwell going to prison, then I have to side with the criminal portion of this, with the portion of the case that's going to actually mete out consequences. The government's letter indicates that prosecutors, recognizing Doe's interest in pursuing her case, had considered alternatives to its position before asking the court to put the case on hold pending Maxwell's trial. So that means Allison Moe and the rest of the prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, they took a look at all of this, and I'm sure that Allison Moe did her due diligence, right? Of all of these prosecutors we have dealt with, Allison Moe seems to be the most trustworthy. And if she is taken a look at this and she sees the overlap here and she thinks that it's going to hurt the criminal case, then I totally understand why she would be asking to put this on hold. Nobody's saying that that Doe can't pursue these claims. What they're saying is they want the criminal case to happen first. After carefully considering the issues in this case and the pending criminal case, the government respectfully submits that nothing short of a full stay of this matter would address the government's concerns and preserve the public's substantial interest in avoiding interference with prosecution of the criminal case, prosecutors wrote. The judge overseeing Doe's case has yet to issue a decision. So, again, it's all about the criminal case, right? As far as we know here, as far as we can see, this is all about preserving the criminal portion of this case. And I'll tell you what, that is really what matters when it comes down to it right now. What matters is the prosecution of the people who were involved in the criminal enterprise. And that all starts with making sure that Ghislaine Maxwell has no loopholes or technicalities such as overlap from two concurrent trials to give her the wiggle room she needs to get off of the hook. This has to be ironclad. All of the T's must be crossed. Everything must be locked in, and it must be completely and utterly unassailable by the defense. That is why I think you see the prosecution coming out here and asking for the hold, the stay, and that is why I think you will see the hold and this stay of the civil portion of the case be granted by the judge. I think that everybody's on the same page here when it comes to the prosecution of Maxwell and the co-conspirators. And I think that that needs to be the number one goal in this whole entire ordeal. Making sure that these people who were involved in all of this abuse, in the running of this criminal enterprise, in the facilitation of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, are held accountable. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And on this 9/11, 19 years later, it is still like it was yesterday to me, folks. I can't believe that it's been 19 years since that day has occurred. It's still just as sad, depressing, and horrible. All right, everybody. I'll be back later on, and we will pick up where we left off. I hope you all have a fantastic Friday.